Welcome to the Global Wellness HQ family of podcasts. We are your international headquarters for resources and ideas and insight in relation to the 9 elements of holistic wellness. Join us as we interview local and international wellness experts and learn how you can implement and improve one element or dimension of wellness at a time. Our experts will share their practical tips on wellness in one of these core areas: emotional, intellectual, occupational, physical, environmental, financial, spiritual, social, or habitual. We created our family of podcasts as a resource for anyone who is looking to integrate the 9 elements of holistic wellness into their daily lives. Welcome to the show. The Global Wellness HQ family of podcasts is proudly sponsored by the Global Wellness HQ community. It's an online membership group where we meet, we share ideas, we share insights, and we all work together and help one another discover our own personal wellness journeys. If you'd like to join us, you can easily click the link below or scan the QR code, and we love hearing your stories. So we hope to see you in the community. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Today, I'm excited. We have Dan Purdy as our guest. Dan, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do with Cultivate Advisors?
Hi, Jeff. Thanks so much for having me on the show. My name is Dan Purdy, and I'm the Director of Partnerships for the US and Canada Pacific Northwest. So, what I do is I just give away free stuff all day, including free advising sessions and different types of toolkits and business resources to small businesses and entrepreneurs who really need them to grow and scale.
Awesome. Now, you talk about partnerships. Who are good partners for you through Cultivate Advisors? Who are you typically working with?
Well, there's two audiences that I typically speak with. The first audience are those who are connected to small businesses and entrepreneurs. Maybe they're a service provider, or perhaps they're the accountant, the professional that advises them already. And we work very closely with them to help them give us warm intros while we give them the opportunity to gift our advisors' times. The second audience is the small business owner or the entrepreneur themselves who are committed to growing and scaling their venture in any industry. We're industry agnostic in over 160 industries, and our 60 advisors really want to talk with those individuals about how they can get to the next level.
Awesome. Well, thanks for making that clear, because I think a lot of people are leery of free, or, there's a lot of misinformation, but I understand that Cultivate Advisors is one of the fastest growing business advisories in North America. What's the secret to that?
The secret is consistency and bringing on the very best people that will join our company. If you look inside our company, everybody who works with us, all of our employees have been former business owners, entrepreneurs themselves. Me, I've had 4 ventures and 2 exits, and I'm just here, as a director. Imagine all of the advisors behind us who have amazing life journeys and experiences and are sharing that with others who are on a similar path.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. Now, before we get into some of the meatier questions, you mentioned to me that you work with teenagers and you teach them wellness and life skills. Would you tell me about that work first, and then we'll get into the business questions of the day?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for asking about that. So every Saturday, I talk with about 30 teenagers about where they're at in life, where they're going. And it's all based on a book that I wrote back in 2017 called FIRES. And it's a personal transformation. FIRES is an acronym. And that acronym talks about the 5 specific areas that we all struggle with as humans. Adults, sometimes they're slow to change. But these teenagers, they really have a passion and a verve for life, and they want to get to the next level. So I put a lot of time and energy and effort into them every Saturday, helping them just do basic things, how to get jobs, how to present themselves, how to communicate, because right now there's a lot of texting going on and not a lot of personal interaction. I also teach them about finances and money and how it works. And that was a really fun lesson 2 weeks ago. And there's all kinds of things that they learn as a result of that about their character. They discover more things about each other than they would have known just from sitting next to each other and texting the other person. And then otherwise, how to develop better relationships and to be good citizens as they launch into the world.
I love that. So, how did you come to write the book, first of all? And then how did you decide to turn that into a passion project? I mean, that's a really cool thing.
I've always been interested in small businesses, and throughout my career, I've worked with Fortune 500 companies for decades, and then also have had these side hustles or these smaller businesses myself. And so I always had a passion for the small business owner and the entrepreneur because I identify with them as well. And so going through that and talking to customers, talking to clients and individuals, I started to notice that there were a lot of things that we all had in common that no one was really talking about. And so I put all of those into what I called a personal strategic plan to really help us as humans, as owners, as parents, as spouses, get from here to there and do it in the quickest manner possible so that we could be effective.
I love it. And I can see you're one of those people that just lights the room up. So I'm going to say on behalf of those kids, thank you for helping them, because I think, I as a parent make my kids my top priority, and I can't imagine anything more important. But I think a lot of people get really busy, and quite frankly, nobody's learned these lessons themselves. How do they teach it to their kids?
Yeah,
So
it's so good. The I'll just briefly say that the last lesson that we had about 2 weeks ago was about cash flow and money and how to save and spend, invest and donate, and to have a specific plan around it. So I gave each kid at the end of that lesson a $100 bill. And so I had about $3,000 out there on the floor. And every kid had to go home and they had to do something with it. And when they came back in 7 days, I had an accounting sheet and I said, I want my money back. And every kid brought their $100 bill back, and each had a story about how they used it to either bless others or how to buy low, sell high. One kid, he only used $25 and came back with almost $250 in profit because he bought and sold and cleaned shoes, sneakers. Apparently, it's $1 billion industry.
wow. Okay, forget whatever else we were going to talk about. That's, you know, okay, so I'm passionate about junior achievement. I was in it when I was in high school, 100 years ago, and I supported it a lot of my adult life. Um, Sometimes the projects were game changers, but a lot of times, kids learned how to be middle managers, and it wasn't that practical. So, what inspired that child, sorry, young person, to do that? Like, did you spark that, or did they just walked away and came up with it on their own?
I believe that children are not just our future. I believe they're our present. And every child has something inside of them that is sometimes locked away. Sometimes it's just bubbling below the surface or above the surface, and it just needs to be unleashed. These kids, they are, I mean, they're amazing people. They're already there. We just need to take an investment or take some time with them to help develop that, a little bit more. This particular child, and by the way, the age group is 13 to 18-year-olds. These individuals, they've already been doing some of these things already, or they just don't know that they have the ability to go after and try new things because sometimes adults just don't take chances on them. Well, I did. And once I pointed them to, there was a scripture in the Bible around, I think it's Matthew 25, verses 14 through 30, and it talks about the parable of the talents and how a master went away for a long time and gave, his three employees different types of money. To one, he gave, let's just say five, the other to two, and the other one. Well, the people with the five and the two money increments, they doubled their money. And he said, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Go and enjoy the rest of my bounty here." And then for the one that just didn't produce anything because they buried it in the sand and gave it back to him and said, "Hey, I know you're a difficult person to deal with, and here's your money back." He fired that because they basically had cost him interest, and he could have put that money in the bank.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of lessons that I'm teaching the kids, but in a practical way with really nice lessons and props, and bringing it to their level where they can really understand it.
Well, and I just love the value, you know, reading your bio. I mean, you've accomplished many things. Um, you do many things, and I love that you're giving in your personal life as well as in your work life. Um, but one of the things that stands out, a lot of people say, "Oh, I'd love to do this or I'd love to do that, but I'm too busy." Yet here you are. I'm gonna guess you're no less busy than anyone else, yet you're choosing to focus on impact. And my audience knows this well, and you wouldn't have any way of knowing this, but my two boys are my everything, and I spend my time, they are my greatest coaching clients. Everything I do is to find resources to help them through life. So I want to thank you on behalf of the parents who, aren't able to do that. But I also think it's an inspiration to all of us that, do we need to watch that seventh hour of Netflix, or could we maybe spend an hour or two or seven helping make the community a better place?
That's a great point, and thanks for being a good dad, because that's really where it all starts. It starts in the home, and it starts with paying attention and literally just being present. Um, these conversations that we have with these kids, the lessons that we teach on a weekly basis, that's just one part of a multi-pronged strategy. We put them through, all kinds of events. We've taken them go-karting. We spend time in playing volleyball in a tournament setting because they're really competitive and they all like volleyball for some reason. Um, we just spend a lot of time with them. Obviously, because they're teenagers, they can't get enough to eat. Can't keep them in sneakers, so we're always packing chest freezers full of frozen pizzas and cool pops and a host of other food items that they like. But just being around them. This last weekend, we took a trip with our entire church organization down to a beach, and it's just sitting around the campfire, strumming guitars, hanging out, just listening to where they're at, what's going on with them, and just being present. Oftentimes, they don't want to hear you talk; they just want to, just know that you're there.
Great, great advice. I love that. And honestly, my humble opinion is, if we focused on kids and stopped causing them to be damaged, we'd have fewer damaged teenagers, and we'd need way less therapy as adults. So to me, it's let's just start by, being there and being present. And I think that's a superpower that every parent can have if they choose to. So
I agree. And unlocking those entrepreneurial and business skills inside some of these kids who kind of gravitate towards that, because every kid knows how to use money, but they know how to spend it. They don't necessarily know how to make it grow, right? So unlocking that in them helps them to become better versed in finance, and to when they become entrepreneurs, or if they become small business owners, at least they have a frame of reference, or they have something positive that they can stand on as an experience to help them get to the next level. Because every success, every failure, we build upon those building blocks.
I love that. And I think you and I are going to talk about Six Sigma, by the way. I don't know if I warned you that, but I'm obsessed. And for the record, I just don't have the aptitude or the time to go get my black belt. Tell me about that journey and how that's shaping what you do today.
Sure. So I was working with British Petroleum at a refinery in Northwest Washington State. I was with their procurement and supply chain management department, and there was the opportunity to become, I guess, more informed and better understand how to run lean processes and to get into the details of what it meant to run the refinery. And so I took some courses, 3 courses, in fact, at Purdue University, and they had a fantastic program which helped me to earn my Lean Six Sigma black belt and learn about dispatching waste and identifying opportunities for improvement, performing Kaizen events, 5S, and a host of other value stream mapping activities to really become more attuned to what was happening around me, and where we just had some low-hanging fruit to save some money, to revenue enhance, and do some other things. From there, that Lean Six Sigma green belt turned into another course towards advanced tools and planning. And then ultimately, I was able to earn my Lean Six Sigma black belt. So watch out, Kia.
I love it. And by the way, I love the Six Sigma mindset, and I think there's many books on the topic, but um, there's one that's escaping. There's 2 brothers that wrote about it. Yeah, I'll figure it out. I'll put it in the show notes. But the cool thing, and my wife and I, and Dan, just brace yourself. My 10-year-old and my 14-year-old and I in the car, we talk about systems and processes. Like that's a conversation in the house because I have 2 boys and they're amazing, and I look at things and I'm like, I know the number one thing in my world, if a business doesn't have systems and processes, I don't want to work with them. Like I just don't even want to try. So I look at my life and I said, why don't I have systems and processes for my life? And my wife resisted at first. She's like, oh, that sounds a little rigid. And I'm like, think about it. You do certain things the same way every time. So why don't we teach the kids, like, for example, we teach them how to clean their room. I can be the martyr parent and I can go clean their room for them, and then I'm exhausted and they're happy, and then it's just, or we could make it fun and we can do it together, and it's become an experience. So just to warn you, Dan, when you talk systems and processes, it comes up in our house once or twice a day.
I have OCD, probably like you. And so I'm the guy who's labeled every single light switch in the home. So I know specifically what lights turn on, what lights turn off. And I'm convinced there's no empirical evidence to the contrary. So I'm convinced that I save about $1.50 every year by knowing which lights to turn on without having to randomly hit them.
you know the last place we lived in, we had this one switch. It was the weirdest thing in the weirdest place, and I'd always flick it, and then I'd be like, oh yeah, that's like, it was like a light in another room. And I'm like, what if I just labeled that? And I figured it out the day I was doing final touch-ups on the wall, cleaning up the paint and stuff, and I was like, why didn't I label that?
Yeah, there you go.
And like you, I would have saved $1.50 and probably 30 seconds of my life, because
The value in processes and systems is really around the standardization and the repeatability of things, right? It helps others to know that there is a right way, or even a best way, even though there's multiple ways to do things.
yeah.
Specific tasks and activities, there's a right way to do it. My wife and I will fight forever about how to load a dishwasher, but there are reasons to move things out of the sink into the dishwasher. And frankly, those are tasks that children can and should do. I don't do anything for my children anymore. They are responsible and they are accountable for that, because my goal is to not be their friend so much as to launch them into the world to be a good citizen. But we have a lot of fun and we're friends too.
And that's the thing. I don't think it's mutually exclusive. I mean, they need the boundaries, they need the guidance. You can be a friend if the boundaries and guidance are there. If you don't have the boundaries and guidance and you're just there to be the friend, that's a recipe for disaster. I shouldn't admit this. Well, I'm going to tell you a story and then I'm going to admit something. When I was in high school, I worked at McDonald's for 3 years, and my manager, the store owner, he kept telling me, like, literally every day, you're so lucky, Jeff, you're getting a world-class business education. And I'm standing there covered in grease, got burns on my hands, and I'm looking at him going, are you nuts? And then afterwards, I realized that it was I was a teenager with keys to $1 million restaurant, and it functioned without any grown-ups in the building. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's, that the Bible, it's all about systems, processes. So the confession is I use Canva. It's my favorite tool. And we create like little process maps for things. And
That's
it's like,
amazing.
I have OCD, as do both of my boys. So yeah, my oldest, his dream this year for Christmas, he wants one of those cry cut label makers.
Oh, that's fun. I like that.
So my
Um,
wife's like, no, he's gonna label everything, and I'm like, yes, he's gonna label everything.
yeah, at some point, maybe he'll get into your workshop and label all your tools or have a shadow board as well, so you know exactly where the hammer is when it's gone missing.
Well,
To about McDonald's. I used to own one of my businesses was a staffing and recruiting franchise,
yeah,
and I'll tell you those kids that came in with the McDonald's background and so on, they were top shelf, and we always looked for that. It was Enterprise Rent a Car or Hertz Rent a Car, McDonald's, and then Tim Hortons up in Canada as well. We really appreciated those folks with that experience because they knew what it took to follow a process, a system, to be accountable for the outcomes, and they had all kinds of SOPs and checklists and so on. And just as a quick segue here, Cultivate Advisors is really big on those processes as well. And so when we align with our clients that are just kind of swirling or they don't quite know where they're going, that's really one of the first things that we'll look at. We'll look at where they're at on their process base and how they're leading their employees in a similar or a focused direction.
I love it. Now, have you heard of the fish philosophy?
Tell me more.
Okay, there is a book, and you're gonna love this, by the way. A good friend of mine sent it to me. Thank you, Steve. Fish philosophy. It's written based on, oh my God, you're in the neighborhood. Okay, Dan. Pike Place Fish Market.
I know it well.
The author of the fish philosophy, he uses their business as a metaphor to help other businesses, and they actually have like a certification and a training. I can't remember the name of the author, but if you go to fishphilosophy.com, it's like this entire mindset. And what I love, believe it or not, yes, I taught this to my kids. There are 4 steps to success. Number 1 is having processes. Number 2 is you are responsible for choosing your attitude. I can't remember 3 and 4 off the top of my head, but the fish philosophy, surprise, surprise, talks about processes. My 14-year-old read it and he loved it. And I think that's what we miss in a lot of corporate cultures is we get too serious, it becomes bureaucratic. There's somebody with a clipboard walking around giving you a red mark on your chart because you didn't follow the process perfectly, rather than, hey, can I help you understand this?
Yeah, that's great. I live 2 hours north of Seattle in Washington State on the border with British Columbia, Canada. And so I'm very familiar with the fish market there and also with commercial fishing, which is high risk, very dangerous. Those men and women every day are doing a spectacular job feeding America and Canada. Um, there's a lot of things that can go wrong when commercial fisher, men and women are out there on the water. Obviously, the risk of weather and the high seas, the fear of the unknown, not knowing, what's going to happen next. I've friends who have been in the industry and all have walked away with either an emotional or a physical scar as a result of catch and selling, their ware. When you get down to the market, which is the retail location, right? That's kind of the end point.
Mm-hmm.
That fish market is crowded. They're literally, buying and selling, and they'll throw the fish over the audience who are walking by or the guests who are going by, because the fish market is also full of, vendors who are selling different kinds of goods. And so there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And sometimes you might throw the fish and it might not land or exactly to the other person. So yeah, that's a great one. I would like to get to know a little bit more about the fish philosophy.
Yeah, apparently it's, I would say, sort of the fun cousin of Lean Six Sigma. And I'm not saying Six Sigma isn't fun, but they literally, I think one of the things is you have to have fun. Like it's,
Yeah.
that's why, the market resounds, is everybody's having fun and they're doing their thing. Love that. So just now I'm going to give Dan something to go away and read. And by the way, Dan, it would be an amazing book to share with your 30 kids.
I love it. I love
The
it.
other book I'm going to throw at you, I'm trying to get something going with my son, with Bob Berg and John David Mann, The Go Giver. And it's been an amazing conversation with my kids. Yes, my 10-year-old gets it. It's a business parable. It's short. What I love is the authors were kind enough at the very back to put some discussion questions in. And it's really a good tool to help kids understand the value of helping others. And
Yeah, that's
I think it also would work really well in a church community. Like it works well in any community. But again, I think kids, if you teach them kindness and being helpful to others and being a good citizen, I think we all win in that. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think the Go Giver series has several different knockoffs or different tangents that it takes as well. So I've recently become familiar with John Berg's work.
yeah, the two of them, they write amazing stories. And I think I'm a networker at heart, and one of my filters, I don't do business with people until I know they've read the book and they get it. If they don't get the book, I don't judge them. It's just we don't need to work together any further. I've had people say, "Oh, I hate that book." I run away screaming because I know that's not going to end well for either of us.
What is one of the largest takeaways that you've had from the Go Giver series?
Well, the Go Giver, and it hit me so deeply. I actually reached out, and I'd like to say I'm friends with Bob Berg now because I've asked him some questions, and he's so generous with his time. He's like answers my questions, and he's a really, really good guy. My biggest takeaway, number one, so I reread it in March of 2020 when the world fell off the cliff, and everybody said networking's dead. We're not going to continue networking. And people told me you can't network on Zoom. And I said, I bet I could. The biggest takeaway was he has a character in the book called a connector, and I wanted to become that person. But the
Mhm.
other thing for me, and this is a lesson I think for a lot of people, is everybody gets so busy. A lot of good people get really busy giving, they never stop to receive. And I was like, Bob, I'm really confused. I'm slow, dumb it down for me here. But, you're telling me to be a giver, and now you're saying I need to receive. And he said, Jeff, I'm just going to give you an example. If you're going around and breathing out all day and you never breathe in, what happens to you? And I said, well, that's stupid. I die. And he's like, exactly. And I went, ah, that broke my brain, changed the things, because I'm one of those people. I figured it out myself. And then I went, that's where this podcast comes in. We're smarter together.
Yeah, and you're doing a really good job with this particular show. I know for us, we have that servant leadership mentality, which is why we give it all the way up front. Even though we're the largest small business advisory in North America right now, we've been on the Inc. 5000 consecutive years now. We give it all away up front. Like for example, my role is to give away 2-hour free advising sessions. I gift my advisors time to companies and to entrepreneurs and small businesses who really want to grow and scale. Um, we also have like all of these toolkits that we've built, learning management system. It's a 10-seat LMS that I think Capital One pays for it, but we gift it to small businesses that really want it or need it. We've got business trainings and videos. We've got 40 or 50 hours of video-rich content that has been done by a comedian that we hired because we got some funny guys in the company, and it makes it really entertaining for people to learn and grow to love, process and Lean Six Sigma or business in general. We talk
Yeah.
more about financials and recruiting and leadership and sales and marketing and those types of topics, but it just makes it really fun for people. And then once
Well,
we've invited them in and they get to know our heart and our passion to helping them propel to the next level, that's when we start talking about, what would this look like if we were to have some type of formal relationship? And our rates are geared towards being so low that people are really kind of taken aback and saying, hey, wait, I have somebody that I've typically worked with and they're much more expensive than you. How can you do that? And then we just talk more about our philosophy.
well, there are some big consulting companies that, charge in the tens of thousands a day, and that's wonderful for the people who can afford it, but the small businesses need something. Now, Dan, I'm going to ask you, so canned questions, everybody else is waiting for the questions. We're going to throw those out. How, I'm going to ask you a really very direct question. I'm an accountant in Washington, and I have my client base. I'm gonna guess, and I know a lot of accountants, and I'm a recovering one, so I can say this. Their first reaction is, "Well, this is a competitor to me," and I know the answer to this, but I want to hear your take on it. Um, to that accountant, how would you describe how they could build relationships with their clients with your free content?
Yeah, that's a great question. Accountants, bookkeepers, wealth advisors, business brokers, we're their partners, we're their friends. Whereas they might be in the accountant example, whereas they might be looking for new clients or they might be looking for new opportunities, we don't compete with anybody. We actually provide them the incentive or the hook to bring more people in. So imagine you're an accountant, in Seattle, and you have some room and you want to bring on some more clients. Well, you can go out there and you can do your social media, you can do your traditional marketing campaigns and your print campaigns and compete with everybody else. Or you can partner with Cultivate Advisors and say, hey, Dan Purdy wants to come and do a webinar, or Dan Purdy wants to come and do an in-person event with us, and you're going to learn about, all kinds of things that you need for your business that then feed into the services that, we, the accountant, provide. And so we work hand in hand to give those incentives. And at the end of it, our incentives are just like no brainers. Like, would you like to meet with somebody who will help you with a 5-year growth and scalability assessment? Yes or no? I mean, everybody needs that. Everybody needs a strategic.
No, I don't want to know that.
No, nobody wants to know the valuation of their business, right? Like we have
Yeah,
that business valuation and health assessment. Would you like to know what your business is worth? I mean, how often are we checking to see what our property values are, or our homes, or our our RSPs or 401ks? How often are we checking the value of those? Nobody can tell you what their business is worth because they don't know. And Dun and
yeah.
Bradstreet did a horrible job, frankly, of telling us because their data is so skewed. And that's not a knock on them. It's a knock on where we're at. Our fintech space just hasn't gotten there yet to give us great stuff. We built that tool, and obviously they're going to be a client because they're going to want our tech. But that's how we partner with those specific accountancies and bookkeepers. Most recently, we actually acquired one of the larger accountancies ourselves. It was called Breakwater out of Delaware, and they're integrated now into Cultivate Advisors. They're an amazing brand, and we've got several hundred people who are just doing amazing things and showing the value of bringing all of the pieces and the components that businesses need together under one roof. We need planning because if you don't know where you're going, every road will lead you there. And then we also have the bookkeeping, the accounting, the fractional CFOs, whatever a company might need to better understand their pro forma statements.
I love it. And that's, my long rant is that, too many accountants focus just on the tax return, and they see bookkeeping as an input into the tax return. They're not stopping to look at what's the value of the business, which, if I have a bank account or an investment account, I check my statements monthly. If you're an entrepreneur and 99% of your wealth is invested in your business, shouldn't you know just basic things like what's the net worth of this business? What's the value of it today? And then a year from now, did I increase that value? Yes or no? If not, why not?
Yeah, and that's how we're good stewards of money, is knowing where we're at today, where we need to be, but then again, having the right plan formulated and implemented towards executing a proper, consistent, standard approach to it.
I love it. Now, one of my favorite questions, which I will not skip, is what's the best business advice you have ever received and how did it impact you?
Oh yeah, great question. Um, Going back many years when I was a teenager in that class, that church class, my teacher at the time told me that you're only as good as your last deal. And I had no idea what that meant because as a perfectionist, right, we always want to do the very best that we can for every single client and customer. Well, from there, that led me on a journey and even towards a book that was, I don't remember the exact title, but something about how customer satisfaction is useless. It's all about customer loyalty. And people don't buy from logos or brands, people buy from people. So, what I learned from that advice of you're only as good as your last deal is I need to continually improve. I need to continually be out there, have many irons in the fire to make sure that these clients that will one day be a part of our organization are continually nurtured and prepped and given what they need to be successful. I'm just simply a vehicle to help them get there.
Awesome. Well, Dan, I could talk to you for hours, but I want to be mindful of your time. How can people find out more about you and learn more about Cultivate Advisors?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. My full name is Daniel Purdy. It's like Purdy paintbrushes or Purdy's chocolates, but without the royalties. And then you can also find me at cultivateadvisors.com. And then maybe in the meeting notes, Jeff, you can drop my free advising session landing page, which is under cultivateadvisors.com. And if anybody who's listening is a business that's earning greater than $500,000 per year, I'd love to talk to you about hooking you up with one of our 60 advisors for a free advising session. We can help you get to those root problems and those barriers and challenges that are keeping you from growing and scaling.
Awesome. And I will put Dan's LinkedIn and his URL in the show notes. So, Dan, it was a real pleasure. I never know which direction we're going to go, but I always trust the conversation. So, thank you for being open and sharing with my audience.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to meet you, Jeff, and have some great exposure to your amazing audience.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our show. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we invite you to either click the link below or scan the QR code to register and listen to other episodes of our podcast. Or if you think your business or you would be a great guest to be on our show, we're always looking for experts in one of the 9 elements of holistic wellness. We'd love to have you. You can either click the link below or you can scan the QR code and complete our speaker intake form. Thank you, and to your wellness.